Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam, and I'm a non-gamer.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Sky Team by Scorpion Mask.
Sky Team is a game in which you and one other player are going to play as a pilot and co-pilot, working together to try and make sure that your plan lands at the destination safely. In this one, you are going to be rolling dice, having limited communication, and working together in order to overcome certain obstacles. This is a game in which you can play numerous times with different destinations so that the game throws unique challenges at you each time you play it. Let me show you how it works down below, and then we'll come back and share thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer.
All right, I have Sky Team on the table. Let me show you guys this cooperative limited communication dice placement game is going to work, in which you and another player are going to be piloting an airplane here, and this airplane needs to reach its destination, as denoted by this card over here, and you want to try and survive and get to your destination with this game. So the components for this game, you are going to have a central board here, and there's lots of different like sliding buttons and moving pieces. You are going to have this acrylic piece right here with the airplane sticker put on it that shows you your balance and whether you are flying balanced or not, or if you are all out of whack. You got these wooden airplane pieces here. You have dice for each player. There's a lot of components here, but everything fits seamlessly into the theme, and it will be very intuitive as I explain the rules to you here. So thematically, what you and the other person are doing, one of you is the pilot while the other person is the co-pilot, and together you are cooperating, trying to get this plane from point A to point B, and you're going to be overcoming some challenges along the way, but you cannot communicate with each other as you play this game. Now, how a round is going to work. At the beginning of a round, you are going to be able to communicate. It's the only time that you can communicate throughout the game, so you might strategize what you're trying to do on that particular turn and deciding how you might use dice if you get in certain numbers and that sort of thing. But once you roll the dice, which is the next thing that you will do, each player will roll their dice into their player screen so that the other person can't see what you've rolled, and then you cannot communicate. No talking, no communicating whatsoever. This card right here will show you who is going to go first, and in this first round we're flying at 6,000 feet, and it is outlined in blue with a blue arrow pointing to the left, so that means that it is the blue pilot's turn to go first. And so what you will be doing with your dice, now remember your dice will be behind your screen and the other player cannot see what you've rolled, but I'm going to bring out these dice here so that you can see them. I have a 1, 2 2s, and a 4. So what I am going to be using those dice for are to do the different actions that need to be taken in order to get the plane safely to where you're going. But there are 2 actions that you must do every turn. The first being placing a die right here if you're the blue player, or placing it right here if you're the orange player, and that is going to level out the plane a certain way. So if, for instance, maybe I place my 4 here, at some point on the orange player's turn, so let's roll their dice, they are going to have to place a die right here. And let's say that they end up placing a 4 as well, which that would be great because these 2 numbers are the same, and this plane here does not get rotated in a different direction to throw off its balance. But had this player not had anything other than maybe this 2, and they had to play the 2 right there, then because 4 is 2 greater than 2, we have to rotate this 2 notches towards the 4. The higher number, in other words. And if this ever gets to one of these X's, then the plane crashes and you lose the game. So you do not want this plane to get too far out of whack. Now, the plane will stay there till the next round, and then you'll repeat this whole process once you have 2 new dice, and that will hopefully move the plane back towards being level. But that's one thing that you have to manage throughout the course of the game. Now, the other place that you have to play dice on your turn is the engines, and it's going to work in a similar fashion. You're going to play dice here, and Maybe you have something like that where our 2 dice are 5. 2 plus 3 is 5. And what you are trying to do is you're trying to get somewhere in between the blue marker right here and the orange marker right here. And these are going to shift throughout the course of the game. But 5 is what we ended up playing. 2 plus 3 is 5. And so 5 is in between 4 and 8. And what that means is we are going to advance 1 space closer to our destination. And I'm going to pull this card a little bit closer so that you all can see it a little bit better. And I'll explain what these little airplanes are on here in a minute. But what you're really looking at are these spaces. We start the game right here where the clouds are. And we need to get a number of spaces to Montreal. And so if you are in between these 2 markers, you're going to advance 1 space. So we would move from here to there, tucking it under the board right here. But had we gone beyond this orange marker, so let's say we actually got a 9, we would go 2 spaces on this track. Now, the little airplanes are important because you need to clear out these airplanes. If we had gone 2 spaces and not cleared off this airplane right here, we would have crashed into that airplane, and that would have been game over for us. So how do you get these airplanes off? Well, you have to take the air traffic controller action, which the blue player can do once, the orange player can do twice. And how that's going to work, I'm going to move this back up here to the top of the board. You are going to want to place a die that is equal to a number of spaces away that you are trying to take the airplane off of. So for instance, we are 1, 2, 3 spaces away from this first airplane. And so I could place this 3 right here, and that would be able to let me remove that airplane off of this track so that whenever we eventually get to that spot, we're not crashing into that airplane, because those airplanes are another way that you can lose the game. So you do have to play dice on these 2 spots at some point on your turn, but the other spots are optional for you to take with the rest of your dice. So what are those spots? Well, I've already explained the air traffic controller. The blue player is going to be controlling the landing gear, whereas the orange player will be controlling the flaps. So what you're doing with the landing gear, you're going to need to place a 1 or a 2, 3 or a 4, or a 5 or a 6 on these spots right here. And when you do, you will scooch over the little marker right here covering up the green light, and that will advance this blue marker 1 space this direction, which means you are going to need more speed to get to where you're going, which thematically that makes sense because we're lowering the landing gear. That's going to increase drag, which is going to slow down our speed. So we need to press the engines further to be able to get to where we're needing to go. And as you place more and more dice on this, then that's going to make the blue marker go even further. Now, the orange player's got a similar task. They are going to be needing to place a 1 or a 2, 2 or a 3, 4 or a 5, or 5 and a 6. And the same fashion, you'll slide over the marker whenever you place a die here, and that's going to increase the top threshold for your speed range here. And these are the flaps. So again, you're needing to increase speed because you're slowing the plane down in a manner as you get closer to your destination. So that's how these actions are going to work. Now, the blue player has the brake option down here, which is really going to be important on the very last round when you are trying to land the plane at the destination, which in this case is Montreal. And you will want to place a 2 first. You have to do this in order. And once you place a 2, you can move that over and you'll increase this little marker right here. Then you'll want to place a 4 on a future turn, and then you'll want to place a 6 on a future turn. You do have to do this in order, and each time you advance this 1 space over. And however far you got on this track needs to be the maximum amount that your speed can be on the very last turn. So you want this number to be as high as possible because you're going to need to place really small dice here if you want to make sure to land on the runway and not go flying off the track and blow up. But that's what you do on the very last round. There are a couple of other things that you're needing to try to iron out throughout the course of the game. And one of the spots that you have that works in your favor are these coffee spots down here. And I know this is at the very bottom of the board, so I'm going to scooch it up just a little bit. But if you ever have a die that you just can't use or you don't want to use, you can spend it right here, and that will earn you one of these really cool coffee cups, which you are going to place in one of these slots right here. And as you might be able to see, it says plus or minus 1, and that means you can spend a coffee cup on a future turn to adjust a die that you've not used plus or minus 1 to be able able to use it somewhere. And thematically, that makes sense because coffee solves all problems. Now, how a round is working is that the first player uses a die, then the next player uses a die, and then back to the first player, and then the second player. And you keep going like this till you've used all your dice, and hopefully you've not crashed the plane. And if you haven't crashed the plane, then you've survived that round, and you get to advance this one step closer, and you've dropped 1,000 feet in elevation, and now it's going to be the other person's turn to go first. And if you get one of these markers right here, you're going to place it up in this section right there, and at any time in a turn, you can spend one of these markers, and then both players are allowed to re-roll any number of dice that they've not yet used that turn. You don't have to re-roll any dice, but you could if you wanted to. And so these guys can come in a lot, very handy in a pinch. So that's the idea with this game. Again, you're needing to keep the plane level. You need to clear out the planes that are flying around you. You're needing to manage your landing gear, your flaps, your brakes, and hopefully you want to land the plane directly on top of the airport and not overshoot it, which can happen if you are not keeping your speed up in between these markers or above this marker if you really need to go fast by the time that your plane gets to the ground. And you can land the plane too quickly and be not anywhere close to the airplane or the airport, which means that you've crashed the plane in the middle of a field or a lake, and that's not good either. Now, I do also want to point out with this game, there is a scenario, a flight log that you can play through after you've learned the basics of the rules, which I've just described to you, and this is going to introduce lots of other things such as kerosene or wind, or maybe you've had a kerosene leak or ice breaks. Lots of scenarios for you to play through that increase in difficulty and introduce lots of new components, which I'm not going to show you too much of, but just know that there's lots more destinations for you to go to and other cards and tokens and items for you to punch out that really increase the replayability with this game. But that's what you have here in Sky Team. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on this one.
And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Sky Team from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. So, Sam, this is a two-player only game, cooperative. We got to work together in this one, but it has limited communication.
Yeah.
So you can only talk at the beginning of the round. After the dice have been rolled, you can't talk at all. What was it like for you trying to figure your way out in this game?
I thought it was really good. It didn't allow for quarterbacking. Everybody had their own roles, and you played those roles.
Yep.
And I think that made it a really good game for gamers and non-gamers.
100%
And I
agree.
think it worked really well. Lance was the pilot. I was the co-pilot. But you're very much making your own decisions. But there is also a little bit of communication. It's the right amount.
Yeah. So yeah, there's communication at the beginning of the round, but really there's not. I mean, I guess there could be some alpha game and quarterbacking in that, but really you kind of both know what you should probably be doing, right? Like, we really got to take out this airplane that's flying at one space ahead of us so that we don't crash into it, or we really got to fix our balance out here.
We both want to win the game.
Yeah, you both have the same goals,
Yeah.
so right, you're trying to achieve the same thing. And with this one, I think the rule set is fairly straightforward. Everything about this game makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, thematically, mechanically, it's very intuitive. So it feels like you've explained the rules, and then it's just like, okay, I got this. Yeah. let's. Or I have the game understood. I shouldn't say I've got this, because it's not an easy game
I
necessarily.
think there's a couple times where I would say, okay, when do I need to use these?
Sure.
You know? But it was still very easy to understand what was supposed to go on there, just maybe what timing would be more appropriate.
Yeah, and that's something I also wanted to talk about in this video, is the timing of the game, because in certain parts of the game, you're not going to be doing certain things. And then other parts,
landing at the beginning.
right, and then in other parts in the game, you're going to be doing certain things. So the game unfolds from beginning to end, and it's not just this repetitive thing that we're still trying to do the same thing, like you've seen in maybe some other limited communication games like The Mind or The Game. And not that those are bad experiences where you're just still all trying to play the cards in the same order. It's just, okay, we did it with 4 cards. Now we're going to do it with 5 cards. Now we did it
Yeah.
with 6 cards. Now it's 7 cards. Like it after a bit, it does start to feel a little repetitive. I don't feel like you have that with this game because
it really does feel like you're flying a plane. I think they did a really good job. Well, I'll get into my pro.
But no, I think the game has a nice arc to it because you do start off the game feeling a little bit of freedom, a little bit of, we can do whatever we need to do with these dice. And then it starts to get a little more restrictive as you run into those planes or as your plane starts to get out of whack. And then you really have to start to, you hit crunch time.
I think at the same time as you play, you gain more confidence. So by the end, when it's crunch time and you really need to have more specific dice, you have a very good idea of what your role is.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get to pros and cons with Sky Team. I think there's a lot to say on this particular game. So Sam, for you, what stood out to you in a good way?
It feels like you're flying a plane. It has, I've never actually flew a plane, but like gears and
the flaps
buttons and lights. But it looks like a control panel, very, simplified control panel.
Sure.
And you see what's ahead of you and you see what needs to happen. And I just think it's because of that, it helps you play the game better.
Yeah, like I said, it's very intuitive. The theme and the mechanics blend so well in this game that you sit down. You don't even have to really kind of be super focused on the rule book. You can kind of skim through the rule book and be like, okay, I think I understand this.
I really like I have no cards. I'm not controlling any cards. Everything's right in front of me. And you don't find that with a lot of games. There's, you may have tiles but a lot of times there's cards involved. And I appreciate a game with no cards.
Now, I think another really good thing about this game is that even though it has limited communication, the teamwork is so vitally important with this game.
You can't just nope out of it.
Right. You can't just be like, well, I'm going to, take the lead on this and go here. And you better go along with that game plan. Because you might have just ruined the game by making that alpha gamer decision, let's say.
Yeah.
So you really have to be careful with your moves and make sure that you're playing a turn that gives your teammate a lot of options to be able to do on their turn.
Yeah.
And not corner them in and force them to have to do something that ultimately might make the plane get wrecked. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. What else stood out to you in a good way?
It's definitely a pretty quick game too. With as I won't say complicated, but as much as they're able to fit in, it's still over 20-30 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great thing for a non-gamer.
Yeah, it's an excellent length of time here with this one for it to feel like a full game experience. Some of the other things that I really enjoy about it, the box says on here on the back that it has 21 different scenarios to play through. I'm not going to tell you that we played all 21 of those, but each is different. Just looking at it and reading through the rules for each of those different scenarios, this game has a ton of replayability. And that was something that after I played it the first time at Gen Con, that I was a little worried about whether it would be the same experience over and over and over again. And it's not, because you have all these different scenarios. And with those different scenarios, there's unlockable things that really shake up what's happening during your flight.
Yeah.
And all of it makes sense. It's all very thematic. It all works. And it really creates a different dynamic experience for you to kind of go through. Yeah. So there's a ton of game in this little box that plays in 20-30 minutes.
And it's a fairly small footprint, too. It's just the board, and you're just working together off of this little board.
Yeah. Now let's talk about some of the things that don't work for you so well. So what stood out to you in a not great way?
For somebody that doesn't know anything about, planes or barely cars, some of the stuff didn't necessarily come naturally to me as far as why do you need to do this first? But it didn't take long to figure it out.
Okay.
And it's pretty self-explanatory, and then it helps that you have somebody to kind of bounce questions off of as well. So very minuscule. And nothing that you could change about that. That's just more going into it, knowing that,
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'll say for me, I think maybe the only con that I have, and it's not necessarily a con for me, but I could see it being a con for some people, is that it can be really easy to lose in this game.
Yeah.
You can be kind of just boogieing along in this and doing all right.
Then you hit a plane.
And then then you ran into a plane. And not that you can, the game is just super swingy and luck dependent at all. I mean, it does involve dice, so there is some luck. You're rolling those dice, but you have ways to mitigate that, and you have ways to choose which dice that you're using to kind of work out around a bad dice roll. But there can be turns in the game where you put a dice down, and before you know it, there was no way to overcome that, because one person played one die, and then I don't have a die that fixes that, and so boom, we lose. And so that can happen, and it can sort of feel like, well, dang, what would we have done in that situation? I don't know if we would have done anything different.
But at least you didn't play an hour and then get to that point.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. And it's the same sort of, I'm going to go back to the mind or the game and talk about those games, because that happens in those games as well, where I just played a card because I thought it was the right card to play, and it turned out not to be the right card to play, and then boom, we lose. And there's not really a whole lot you could have done in that situation. It's the same sort of experience in a way with this. So that for me is the only con. All right, let's get to a score for this one. A scale of 1 to 10, love to hate. Where does Sky Team come in at for you?
I thought this was a really good game. It's very well produced. I like that it's a cooperative game. I think it's one of the best cooperative games that we've played. So I'd probably give it an 8.2.
Yeah, I'm really high on this one as well. And Sam, if you weren't going to say it, I was going to say it. This may be the best cooperative game to come out all year for me so far. And maybe I should have said this in pros and cons. I guess you could say it's a con that it's only 2 players, or that could be a pro for some people, because there needs to be those kind of games out in the world where you and another person are being able to have a really tight knit experience with this one. But because it's such a great cooperative game, it would have been cool to have been able to play it with 4 people instead of just 2. I don't know. No. Not for you. But for me, it's the best cooperative game that's come out this year. Because of that, I'm going to give it really high marks. I'm going to say that this is an 8.9 for me. I really, really, really like this game. The only thing keeping it from not being above a 9 is just what I said a little while ago about how it can be really easy to lose in this one. All because I placed the wrong die at the wrong time. And there's not much you could do about that. But it's fun. You'll want to set it right back up again and take another stab at it when that happens. So that's not a huge knock for me. Everything else about this game is a home run. So I really, really enjoyed it. All right, that's Sky Team from Scorpion Mask. Leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think about this game.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.